Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and Dopamine. Ta-da!
Hello! Welcome to episode 90 of Dungeons and Dopamine. I'm Bree.
I'm Jess. Woo!
Woo!
We decided last week we were going to support each other.
We're great at hyping each other up. Go, Jess! Woo!
Fatty liver!
Go team!
That is a joke that no one's going to... We probably won't understand it by the time this episode comes out.
Why are we laughing about fatty livers? It's so inappropriate.
I'm throwing a fit now. I've kicked the mic stand.
At least you're not punching it today.
Yet. So...
I have a Disney question for you that I just thought of.
Okay.
Did you gather pins for Disney? Did you trade pins or do any of the pin stuff?
So, we did not. The only reason really is the expense of the pins. Mm-hmm. It is a really fun thing to do, but in the end, I kind of felt like I would rather have my picture frames or souvenirs of other sorts,
right,
than spending that money on pins. They can range anywhere from $8 to $45. It's insane.
Before I fully researched, I got on Shein and I bought a whole bunch of pins for, I think I spent $30 and I got a whole bunch of them. And then I have a special edition one that I was able to buy because I have the Disney credit card or whatever.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And that one was a stupid amount of money, but whatever. But then I started reading about it and people are really weird about this.
Yes.
The fact that the pins I bought aren't Disney trademarked or whatever.
Yeah, the back has to be a certain way.
It doesn't have the waffle back with Disney on it. People get upset that that we would trade non-licensed pins, which is crazy to me. Why, wild. If these pins are all at minimum $5 each?
Yes.
I'm not gonna buy a bunch of those and then let my kid give them away all day at the park.
Yes.
Not to mention, I'm not going to spend all day at the park looking at every pin he picks up and going, oh, this one isn't licensed. We can't take this one.
Yep.
So I'm just going to bring them and we're going to have fun with it. And I'm just going to play dumb if anybody's like, those aren't a licensed pin.
Staff really won't, from my understanding. I could be wrong, but staff really won't mention it.
Because they shouldn't ruin dreams.
And they don't really care, I don't think. I think it's more of the hardcore collectors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you were trading a cheap piece of junk for, a plastic or a button pin or something for a $90 antique Dumbo pin. I saw a lot of videos on this.
Don't give your kid the $90 antique Dumbo pin, okay? Because my kid is going to trade it for the $1 Grogu one that I got off Shein.
And we did, some of the pins are really cool at Disney World, and we did buy Carly one. You actually had gotten her a really cute gift set delivered to our room for her birthday while we were there. It came with a pin lanyard. So she has put her few pins that we've gotten, and the few that we've had that weren't Disney, like you said, and she hangs them on that, and it's really cute to display. I have also seen people do cork boards and stuff. There's some really cool displays.
People get crazy. They decorate their windows and the door of their hotel, and then they put the pins on there, and you can trade them out and all kinds of crazy stuff.
I think that's putting a lot of faith in humanity.
Right.
Because, even at Disney World, there are still people who will just strip your board because they deserve
free stuff
it or whatever.
Or steal strollers or,
Oh my gosh, I have to rectify something.
Oh.
I messed up so badly on an episode of
what did you
Dungeons
do?
and Dopamine. So I was talking about Carly and a Ninja Turtles outfit that I put her in when she was little. And I said I clipped an orange flower clip to it.
I know what you're talking about.
And then I said,
remember you saying it.
Because we know the best Ninja Turtle is Leonardo. No. No. Not only is Leonardo not orange, he is blue. Michelangelo is the best Ninja Turtle, hands down. And I I bastardized it, and I shouldn't be forgiven.
We have to punish you.
Flogging. Mm-hmm. It's the
only option.
And it won't be enough.
You have to live with this shame for the rest of your life.
I do. In our description, Bree hit me.
She deserved it.
I
did. She was asking for it, okay?
This is for my game. Anyway, in our description, I mentioned it. Bonus points if you catch Jess. I think it was disrespecting the Ninja Turtles or something like that. I am a huge Ninja Turtles fan. I don't know how it did.
It was just a slip of the tongue,
yeah,
I'm sure. That's why I didn't correct you, because I knew you knew what you meant.
And Ryan caught it, and of course that's unacceptable. He can't catch my weaknesses. Only I can catch his. Like when he ties his shoes.
He's so bad at it. He's such a child.
This is the new running joke of our lives. It's never letting it go.
Recording session.
You should get him a ceramic shoe that lays up.
So this episode should have premiered last week, but we had to talk about love instead.
Right.
But I'm going to talk about the full moon, which I actually am surprised I haven't talking about. I haven't talked about already, because it kind of seems like one of those topics I would have covered very early on. So the last full moon would have been February 12th, which is the week before this episode will air. So the next full moon, for those of you that are actually listening to the episode and not recording it, will be March 14th. And as always, I'm going to start with the science of full moons. So obviously a full moon is exactly what it sounds like. It is when the moon appears to be full in the sky. And this only happens when the sun and the moon are on opposite sides of the earth. So they're like 180 degrees away from each other.
I legitimately did not know that. That's
Me neither.
Why it showed up. Okay, good. Because I thought maybe it was just one of those facts that you should know, but don't because you skipped a day of school or something.
Why would you need to know in-depth information about full moons? Because someday you might have to do a podcast episode, okay?
Give just enough information to be dangerous.
Yes, just enough to be dangerous. So, much like the solstices, there is a specific time that the moon is full. So we typically refer to it as like the night of the full moon, or the full moon is next Friday, but it is like a moment in time, like just like the winter and summer solstices. And this means that technically the full moon could happen during the day. Like the February one, when I looked it up, February 12th, the full moon was actually at like 8:55 a.m. in the United States.
Okay.
And that has to do with obviously time zones and just the angle of the earth and where the moon lines up.
So that night or the night before, would it still look full even though it isn't a true full moon?
Yes.
Okay.
So the day before a full moon and the day after. So there's about 3 days that really the moon looks full.
Okay.
And at that point, like the day before and the day after, it's about 98% full. So it's pretty darn
to
close.
Our eyes, it's gonna be full.
It's gonna be May. You might be able to pretend like you notice that there's a sliver missing, but it's pretty much full. And it also has, because the Earth's axis is something about like 5 degrees off, sometimes the moon, depending on how it lines up, might not even look completely full, or you might not be able to see the full moon. But I think that's pretty rare here in Michigan, just because we're so close to that 45-degree equator line.
Okay.
So a moon cycle is about 27.3 days, but because it has to match up with the Earth's cycle and the Earth's rotation, a full moon cycle, or going through all the different phases of the moon, takes just over 29 and a half days. So that doesn't completely match up with our calendars. Our months tend to be 31 days. So typically there are 12 full moons every year, but every once in a while we get an extra one. So there might be 2 full moons in 1 month, or 13 full moons in 1 year.
We get a leap moon.
We get a leap moon, but we call it a blue moon.
Oh, okay.
And this word is actually kind of new. The first time anybody sees it in history is like 1937, which is crazy to me. Like, I would have thought this was like a Greek thing.
Right.
So, and there are two different definitions for blue moon. You have a seasonal blue moon, which would be the third full moon of an astronomical season, or a monthly blue moon, so a second full moon in a calendar month. And typically the seasonal full moon is the more traditional or original blue moon and is more rare. So the phrase once in a blue moon, that's where that comes from. The monthly blue moon we do see really like every couple of years, sometimes every year, but usually every 2 to 3 years. So it's not as rare as it seems, but especially back in the day before we knew so much about science and how we could predict things, we thought it was a lot more rare.
And I feel like sometimes you know that these weather or these anomalies are happening, but you legitimately can't see them because of weather.
Right, or where you're at on the earth and how things work out. The point of the moon's orbit that is closest to Earth is called the perigee, and the point furthest away is known as an apogee. And when the full moon is close to the perigee, it's known as a supermoon or a super full moon. And actually in August of 2024, we had a super blue moon.
Oh.
So we had a blue moon in August. It was the second full moon in August, plus it was at the perigee, so it was closest to the Earth, so it was also a supermoon, or very big. When it's on the apogee, it's actually called a micromoon, which I had never heard of, referred to before ever. I think probably we just don't care about that as much because it doesn't sound as cool as a supermoon. We know that the moon affects the tides and the water levels on Earth, and obviously going along with that thought process, when the moon is full or new, that is when we see the most distinction in the tides. So because the moon is full, it's going to be pulling on the water and changing the tides more more significantly, and then the opposite is true of a new moon, because a new moon is essentially when there's no
Twilight movie.
Yes, also that. Funny, I'm going to talk about that later too. These tides, so the moon phases of new moon and full moon and how it changes the tide is known as spring tides or king tides. And then one other thing I did not know is lunar eclipses only happen during full moons.
Oh. I guess that makes sense.
Right?
When you think about it.
Like, if you think about it, yeah,
logical.
That makes sense. But if I'm thinking about a lunar eclipse, I'm not like, oh yeah, when the full moon. So, in a lunar eclipse occurs about every 6 months, because it's when the full moon is on either node of its orbit. And so it occurs about every 6 months and is often 2 weeks before or after a solar eclipse, which occurs during a new moon.
Might also be a new mood. I don't know.
Could be. I mean, speaking of moods, there are some theories that a woman's menstrual cycle can be tied to the moon cycle.
I have heard that.
So large studies have shown maybe just a small correlation, but it is thought that that is mostly because in this day and age, women spend a lot less time outside, because it is actually dependent on how much natural light you receive. So the more time you spend outside, the more likely you are to cycle with the moon. And it can happen one of two ways. So most women will either, they'll start their period on the full moon, and that's called a red moon. You know, surprise, surprise.
Sure. Yeah.
Or, and this is the happier one, or the more talked about one, a white moon cycle would be a woman that ovulates right around the full moon, which would mean then her period starts around new moon, which is when the moon is actually gone. So there is a lot of, and I'll get more into the lore later, but there's a lot of like spirituality and fertility thoughts around the full moon, because, you know, it's thought that if you're spending enough time outside, you'll actually ovulate with the moon and the power that it brings and all the spiritualness. So I thought that was kind of crazy. And then there is actually some references that show an actual increase in births during the full moon.
I worked in retail. You probably have something about this. I worked in retail, and the full moon was legit the time when weird stuff happened and strange people happened.
Yes. Strange
Maybe
everything.
Quirky people.
Quirky is a good word.
Yeah.
Another interesting part about full moons is the date of Easter is actually determined by a full moon.
Oh.
So Easter is celebrated on the first Sunday after the Paschal full moon or the Easter full moon, which is always right around the spring equinox or the vernal equinox. And talking about the Paschal moon, so we do name our full moons, and there are 3 different
Gregory?
Gregory, Samuel. There are 3 different mostly recognized calendars. So we have obviously the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, because the seasons are different depending on what hemisphere you're in. And then there's also a Chinese list of moon names. So if we're talking about the northern hemisphere, which is where we're at, we have in
Giving
January.
them too much information.
They're gonna be able to find us. We have in January we have the wolf moon. February is the snow moon, the worm moon, the pink moon, the flower moon. The strawberry moon is in June. The buck moon, the sturgeon moon, the corn moon, the harvest moon in October, the beaver moon in November, and then the cold moon in December.
I don't have an issue with any of those except the worm moon.
Right?
That's the most offensive out of all of those.
And it's March. Like, what about March is worms?
Right.
And I'm not going to read all the Chinese ones and the southern hemisphere ones, but as you can guess, they do adjust a little bit depending on the season. So when you're talking about the southern hemisphere, whereas we have the harvest moon in October, they have the harvest moon in April. And that's obviously because harvest times change depending on what part of or where you're at on Earth. And that is a lot of where these names came from, whether it's old Native American beliefs or like the Chinese system. A lot of these names are based on either like harvest time or things that were happening seasonally that they would either celebrate or be scared of or something along those lines. So back in the olden days, you saw a lot of festivals and feasts and celebrations or religious things planned around the full moons and the different types of names and whatever they were. I could do a whole nother episode just about the moon based on where some of these stories and where some of this cool like historical information comes from, or the lore and the stories behind the names. But I really did try to focus just on the full moon for this episode, so I did not get too distracted off on those things. And going from names, jumping into other lore of the full moon. So to start, the word lunar or Luna, which is the god that the moon is named after, sounds a lot like the word lunatic. So we have, even the Greeks, for centuries, we have associated the moon, and especially the full moon, with some sort of craziness. So lunatic is madness. We've always, centuries ago, we've always associated the full moon or the moon with craziness and like changes and all kinds of chaos, which I thought was very interesting. And like you mentioned, people that work in retail, people that work in doctor's offices, especially emergency rooms, will tell you that the full moon brings out the crazies, whether it's the crazy people or just the craziest situations that maybe aren't anybody's fault, but just like would never happen any other time.
Yeah.
But the most interesting part is this has been studied numerous times. They have tried to prove that the full moon has some sort of tie to these things, and they can't prove it one way or the other. In fact, one website I read mentioned that 2 separate studies, one that was done in the UK and one that was done in Australia, studied dog bites around the full moon. Oh. And the one from Europe determined that there are twice as many dog bites during the full moon, but the one in Australia found that there are less dog bites during the full moon. So everything is kind of nothing can be realistically proven one way or the other. There's no studies that show that homicides go up. There's no studies that show that abuse goes up or murders or anything. But everyone you talk to will tell you that everybody you talk to has an anecdotal story of somewhere they worked where every time the full moon came out, it got crazy.
Yep.
Many people also report sleep disturbances during full moons, whether it's insomnia or like increased sleepwalking or increased sleep terrors and nightmares. Personally, I think this is just because the moon is really, really bright. Like, we sleep a lot less soundly during the full moon because we don't have curtains on our windows.
Sure.
And the moon shines in our window at night. So, yeah, that's going to interrupt our sleep.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then, obviously, we can't talk about full moons without talking about werewolves.
Yep.
So this is the most famously associated lore surrounding the full moon. Most werewolf stories involve a person who is infected with lycanthropy through some sort of usually traumatic animal attack, and they are then forced to become a wolf on the full moon, and it's usually a very painful change. Most of the time they lose their memory. They wake up the next day in the middle of the woods covered in blood with no memory of what happened or why their face is covered in blood or whatever. Now that werewolves are becoming kind of mainstream in especially like the romancy genres, especially since Twilight. And before Twilight, there was Anita Blake, and she was very much into lycanthropes. And so now we see different lore where maybe the werewolves have control over when they change, or, they have to change at the full moon, but they have control over it and it's not as painful, and they stay aware of who they are and what choices they make, or it's even like a special power they can change whenever they need to. It changes whether, it was something that they were forced into, they were attacked and went through this horrendous change and had to survive, or maybe they were born into it and they have a family and a pack and all this support and like these cool magic powers that come with it. So it went from being like a very terrible, awful thing that happened to somebody and caused this like traumatic change every month to something that's kind of like romanticized and almost like a kink fetish in some communities. It's very strange to me.
Yep.
I mean, I will say that if you make me choose between vampires and werewolves, I'm always going to choose the werewolves. But it's still a weird change for me.
You're saying you're Team Jacob.
I was always Team Jacob. Let's be fair.
I'm not Team Robert Pattinson. What was his name?
Edward.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. I was old enough for that. I was not Team Edward, but Jackson Rathbone. What was his name? He's the one that was with Alice. Mm-hmm. What? We should know this.
We do know this. Edward and Alice and Emmett and
Rosalie.
And
Carlisle.
Did it start with a C?
Colin.
Yes, it is now.
Yes, Colin Jackson Rathbone. I was always his fan. He does an amazing job in Criminal Minds. You're gonna Google it?
Yep.
He does an amazing job in Criminal Minds. Being the name just came to me and then left.
Jasper.
Thank you. I almost said Jackson, and I was like, no, that's wrong.
I had a Jackson in my head too.
I don't remember what story I was telling, so we'll just ignore that part. And yeah, it was Jasper. Jasper Jackson.
That was his full name. Good job.
That was a really long way for me to say. I always choose the vampire, but probably the weird one in the corner.
That tracks for you. I know. 100%.
I'm romancing a vampire on Baldur's Gate, which I've talked to you ad nauseum about.
Every episode.
And
also in D&D. Weren't you trying to romance a vampire in D&D as well?
To romance the big bad evil guy, Strahd. He's hot.
Can't be helped.
I gotta do what I gotta do. Yeah, I've got a problem.
You have a type.
I do.
I do love that we have been best friends for this long and we still have opposite types in men.
It worked out very nicely for us, though.
We never had to have the same guy arguments because you were always vampire and I was always werewolf.
Especially if it was a redheaded werewolf.
Oh, just can't get away from it.
Ed Sheeran.
He's so pretty. And then all I have for the last bit of it is the full moon has become very symbolic in a lot of cultures or religions, especially some of the more pagan religions. You know, if you look at witchcraft, it's whatever. Paganism, witchcraft, that type of thing. The full moon is usually very important. There's a lot of rituals around it.
Well,
yes.
In movies and things.
Yeah, and it's always like a rebirth or a powerful, people, if you're into crystals, people will charge their crystals by the light of the full moon.
Sacrifice a virgin on the full moon.
Yeah,
I mean,
obviously. It's the only time you can sacrifice virgins, okay?
It was talking movie tropes, but I mean, whatever you do, you do.
We don't kink shame, okay?
I won't yuck your yum. I'm just not going to try it. Now, hanging someone from the rafters to flog them if they say the wrong Ninja Turtle, absolutely.
But no full moon sacrifices. Not my jam.
Dungeons and Dopamine does not promote murder.
Usually.
Or violence.
Usually.
Most of the time. We're terrible at this.
We're going to get sued.
So sued.
Or arrested.
Both. Why not both?
Why not both?
Well, I did not get enough love last week. That sounds like a personal problem. You should take that up with Ryan.
I have to go. You're making me
Ryan
uncomfortable.
And your vampire love. Your pixelated vampire love.
Pixelated vampire love.
All right. So, anyways, I didn't get enough love last week, and
Jessica always needs more love.
I need all the love and all the attention all the time. Just don't let me know that you're giving me attention, or I'll feel awkward. It's a really difficult line to ride. But no, I was originally planning on this being my Valentine episode, and then we decided we were going to talk about love. But this was a little bit about love, but in a Jessica way. Surprisingly, it's not a murder or a haunting. Instead, I have gone back. We truly have gone back to our roots the last few days, or few episodes, because this is a folklore-based love.
Folklore.
And it's not purely folklore. I have to think so hard about that word because of folklore. It just came so smoothly and easily.
It's just a problem now.
But it's as folklore as love can get in my research. And I want to start out with one that I think is fairly popular. And this is the red string. And this is a Chinese lore. And the idea is every person has a red string tied to their finger. And that red string goes to a person who is going to have a significant impact in their life.
Okay.
Which could be someone you're going to meet and it's going to have a big impact, like you and I, or like Ryan and I, soulmate. Your string can stretch and contract, but never break. And you cannot change fate. Sort of like you can't cut the string,
right,
like the strings of fate in Greek mythology. So anyway, there's a little story that goes around with this, and it's that many years ago, there was a Chinese emperor. And of course, they don't give dates because I'm sure many years ago, the emperors were saying many years ago.
Right. They don't want you to get too specific.
Exactly. Let's leave it open. He wanted to find his wife, and he chose to contact a witch who would lead him to the end of his string. And the witch did. She brought him to a small, poor village and introduced him to a peasant woman holding a baby. And he thought that the witch was mocking him. So he angrily knocked the woman down and...
Always a bad idea.
I know, right? Gosh. And then he declared the witch to be hanged. When he knocked the woman down, he injured and scarred her baby on her forehead. Which is unforgivable, BT dubs. I don't care who you are. So, time went on. He did not marry, but eventually the elders, or however you would say it, told him it was time. He needed to get married. So he said, well, who's the best prospect? I don't know who to marry. They said, well, there's the daughter of a very powerful general, and we think she would be the best choice. So I guess he was like, let's go.
Fine.
And on his wedding day, his wife-to-be walked down the aisle with a veil over her face. And when he lifted the veil to reveal her face, she had a scar on her forehead.
She was Harry Potter.
She was exactly. Hello, Hamura. What's that? Like the light one, isn't it? I just assume Voldemort says all of his spells that way. What's the killing curse?
Avada Kedavra.
That's how they do it on TikTok. Is it light? Alohomora?
I don't know. I feel like that's a made-up word now because I thought about it too much. Anyway, see if I can Google that.
Thank you, please. Yes. Lumos is probably light.
That is.
Anyway, I'm not as sad about misdoing that as I am the Ninja Turtles. That was just straight up
unacceptable.
Truly, I don't even have words for it.
Oh, that's
I don't
the
have
unlocking
words for
one.
most things.
Alohomora
No,
is the unlocking objects.
Got it. I'm a D&D fan, guys. I actually do love Harry Potter.
I'm going to do a whole episode of just curses and spells.
Oh, it's probably good. Anyway, sorry. Okay, distracted. Anyway.
Changing subjects to curses.
So I kind of think the Red String of Fate is a cool thought. So I do also have an ancient Greek story because of course I do. Of course.
They were the kings of love.
Exactly. Except
awful love.
Yeah, but it's kind of a wild story. So when humans were made, they had 4 arms and 4 legs, 2 faces, and 2 sets of genitalia. They were very powerful. And the gods were scared that they were too powerful and they were going to take over the gods because that was always what they were afraid of. So there were 3 genders, man, woman, and androgynous. Men were said to come from the sun. Women were said to come from the earth, and the androgynous were said to come from the moon. I don't know why there were 3, but there were.
Okay.
So, so Zeus, while the gods were arguing about what they were going to do about the humans, Zeus decided he was just going to go down to earth and rip them apart.
Just going to go deal with it, guys.
I got this.
Leave this to me.
They decided they couldn't destroy humans because they needed the gifts and offerings and praise that the humans gave them because...
And,
yeah.
Humans to be vessels to make babies.
Exactly. Percy Jackson. So he just was like, I'm done arguing. I'm going down. I'm going to rip them apart. We'll all be good. So not only did he fix the problem of them being so powerful, but he also created double the amount of humans to give them sacrifices.
Perfect.
And crap.
Just what we needed.
Exactly. But the humans were very sad. They broke their spirits, essentially. And Apollo felt really bad for them. So he came down, and when Zeus ripped the humans apart, he left gaping holes within them. And so Apollo sewed all of the humans back up.
Aww.
He left.
I like not having gaping holes.
I so appreciate it. Apollo left one sign to remind humans of what they had once been, and that is our belly buttons. He did his thing and he helped the humans, but they were still very sad.
Thanks for the belly button.
Thank you. After they were repaired, the humans became pretty much what we are today. But deep inside of us, we know that there is another half of us somewhere out there, and we are constantly always searching for our soulmates.
Aw.
I like that.
That's cute.
One thing I kind of looked up soulmates just for kicks and giggles, and it's the best thing I found to explain them is the person that makes you feel complete. Mm-hmm. Like they fill that gap in your life and make it so you feel whole and not lacking, which I thought was pretty cool.
Your extra 2 arms that you've been missing.
Exactly. Unless there was an accident. You gotta account for all circumstances.
Right. Can't just broad stroke.
No. Zeus made mistakes. The next thing I want to talk about takes a little bit of a turn, but it's still love. But it is love potions.
Number 9.
Exactly. So I do have that written on here. These love potions are specifically geared more from middle-aged Europe. So there might be other areas. I did hear Greek use them as well. Of course they did. These might be tied in from different areas, but they date back to biblical times. Obviously, when we talk about them, there's a trope to them nowadays. A lot of times they're used as parables, like stop taking away people's free will. A lot of times when a connection is made by love potion, they're unhappy.
There's something weird about it.
Exactly. I wanted to bring up the song Love Potion number 9 because he kisses a cop and gets in trouble. It's a funny song, but it's even that is telling you don't do it. I wanted to bring up Harry Potter, ironically, because Ron gets those spiked candies and falls in love with who, I can't remember who does it.
Lovelace? That's probably not her name.
Can't. All I can think of is Lavender Brown, but I think that's the person he dates later on in the book.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, so it goes very badly for Ron. He ends up kind of sick and lovesick and hurting himself and being stupid. And it's just, when we talk about love potions and think about love potions, they're really not a positive thing.
I think it's interesting. So last week we talked about like the love chemicals and that overload of like dopamine and noradrenaline and how it can cloud our judgment and our decision making skills and like mean that we don't see all the bad qualities of somebody. I wonder if that's where the lore of love potions come from. Like, God, I never would have acted like that unless I was under a spell of some sort. Like, I never would have let that go, or I never would have agreed to that unless somebody had me under their spell.
Before we understood truly that it was a science and not. That's an interesting thought.
It's like witchcraft.
Right, yeah.
How did you manage to convince me to do that?
When these love potions were made in real life, they used very dangerous and disgusting ingredients. Mandrake root was thought to be an aphrodisiac, but it's also dangerous for you. It can make you very sick. This is so gross. Human remains like powdered bone, pubic hair, and menstrual blood.
I knew you were going to say that, and I was hoping you wouldn't.
I know. I don't want to say
because
it's so gross.
It's gross as it is. Like, I can see the screwed up logic there. Like fertility and love and babies and blood and I mean, blood is what the most intimate thing you could pubic hair is weird though. Like,
it makes me think of that scene in
American Pie.
No, I have not watched that movie, but She's All That. He puts it on a pizza and tries to make a kid.
Nope, same thing. Yep. No, I was thinking of that too. It wasn't American Pie.
Literally makes me gag. Okay. Anyway. So, and oftentimes the menstrual blood was the first of her menstrual ever. Like, her first period blood was. Yep.
Witches be crazy.
I know. Worms, which is ironic because you brought up the worm moon. I brought up the worm moon, really, but I focused on it.
They must make those potions in March.
Absolutely. I wonder if there's any tie.
Ooh.
Anyway, animal remains. Verbena.
Okay, which is a plant.
Yes, which I also believe, I thought that it could make you sick.
I think so. I want to say it's associated with
killing people,
or
right?
like home abortions.
Oh, okay. The other one that is mentioned in this particular article is roses, which if you're not careful, as you've mentioned in your topics a few times, flowers can just make you sick. You should not, like, cake decorators will not use certain flowers on cake because you can poison the guests.
Yeah.
So
Foxglove is really pretty, but it will kill you.
Yes, or your pets, or yeah. It's just gross. I don't really have anything to follow that particular topic up with because it's just gross.
Because it's just gross.
I just don't like it.
I am not finding anything for verbena.
Maybe I'm just
Sleepiness, drowsiness. I don't think it's as nefarious as I was thinking, at least.
Well, I don't know if that's good or bad. But
Right?
I mean,
It's good for gallbladder pain.
I should be eating verbena.
It'll be fine. Oh, no. For treating symptoms of menopause, irregular menstruation, and increasing milk flow if breastfeeding.
Wow. So really, it's not dangerous at all.
Or, in high doses, it
Yeah,
might
I think,
have been used for
yes. A
that
lot
at
of
some
things
point.
can be. So I guess that makes sense. So we did find out that verbena isn't as nefarious as we had both thought.
Right.
But there must be something to it because we did both think it, and they were using a lot of things that were stupid and poisonous and very dangerous. I don't know if it was getting people high or sort of drunk, and so they were looser, which made it feel like, yeah, love potion. This is totally working. I'm not sure what it was behind it, but
something that just like lowers inhibitions.
Yeah.
It almost. Let me just make a great stretch here.
Sure.
Verbena kind of looks like Veritas, which would be the truth serum.
Perfect. I actually thought of vervain, which is a poison to vampires in the Vampire Diaries. So, I mean, we kind of went the same way.
Yeah. All the same thing. These are all uses for verbena. Thank you.
The final just few things I have that I thought were kind of fun are some worldwide traditions, old and current, that happened or happen. Now, bear with me. If this is not something that actually happens, the internet is what told me. One person in that country may have done it once, and the internet was like,
and now
this
it
is
counts.
a great big trend. Yeah. So
like Tide Pods in the United States.
Exactly. Like us in Europe.
No, we are big in Europe.
We are
Europe.
Not anymore.
We are Europe.
Not after they hear that. I love tea. We should talk about tea more often. I'm sorry.
It's the only thing we know about Europe. Tea and Harry Potter.
Oh, Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
Neil something.
So
Neil Newbon.
Scratch that one from the list.
That's my vampire's voice actor.
Oh.
He's actually hilarious, and he plays D&D. And we've been watching him and the other cast
And we've
members.
been hanging out.
Well, that'd be so weird. So weird.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Let me call him. He could be a guest star. Oh my gosh, that'd be my first thing. Will you guest star on my podcast?
Please.
Will you just be a star in on the podcast? We can do like a romantic reading with each other.
You read these lines. I'll read these ones. Wrote them myself.
It just says, I love you, Jessica.
Over and over and over.
I love you. I would die for you. You are my life. You are my soul.
It's like the printed boyfriend in the emotion Inside Out.
Yeah,
I would die for Riley.
Exactly. I'm just gonna take the lines from that movie and just put my name in it.
Perfect.
This one says Riley. No, just substitute my name.
He only picks one of them.
He's really funny, though.
He'd get it then.
He
It'd
would.
be fine. I see this going well.
I do, too. I truly do think we could be besties, because he's hilarious. And plays D&D, which is literally the most important part.
Yeah. And you're hilarious and play D&D. So what else do you need?
Best friends forever.
Forever.
Sandlot forever. I'm sorry. Anyways.
We do so well until the last 10 minutes.
Always.
And then it all just falls apart.
Dungeons and Dopamine. at the last 10. The final 10.
The final 10.
Okay, so a really fun one is Vinegar Valentines. And I sort of feel like, do you remember, I believe it was during the Reader's Digest episode you did? You talked about old style Valentines that were kind of weird and sort of creepy. And I wonder if these were sort of it. So these are called Vinegar Valentines, and these were made very cheaply, very crappy, and they were rude and sarcastic.
Oh.
You were to give them to people who you wanted to make go away. Like, okay, so directly from the article that I can't find now, says the targets of these cards were varied and could include neighbors, enemies, bosses, teachers, or simply those whose advances you wanted to dismiss. They weren't cruel per se, but they were not kind. They were not your typical...
Like a little snarky.
Yes.
Oh, yes. We should bring those back.
And we should look up some of them, and I wonder if I can find some to put on our stuff when it comes to it.
Can you... I love this.
I'm not sure how to answer that question.
We have a whole holiday to tell people we love them. Let's have a whole holiday. It's like the Purge, but word version. You just have a whole day where you can say whatever you want to whoever you want, whether it's snarky or romantic.
I have so many of these to mail. I'm starting my list. First person is Neil. That's not true. I love him. Okay, so you've heard the phrase heart on my sleeve. Like, I wear my heart on my sleeve. Or the Clueless theme song for, I think it was the TV show. But she wears her heart on her sleeve. Except they sang it correctly.
Good job.
Better. Look, I have to sing once per episode, whether it makes it in or not. Anyway, I feel now that this means they're very open with their feelings, that you can tell what they love, what they want, what they do. You can read them very well. Their emotions aren't well hidden. But have you ever wondered where that originated from? Because a lot of our origins are pretty freaking gross and scary and involve menstrual blood. So I wanted to share some of the theories. I guess this isn't exactly folklore, but I thought it was cool.
Unacceptable.
Dang it.
Don't say them. I don't want to hear them.
I'm going to read some Vinegar Valentines to you.
They're pretty awful. I found some.
There's actually a bottle of vinegar out there that we use to spray on things to clean them, and I'm just going to bring it in here and spray you with it. So there are 3 theories about where this saying came from. Not vinegar, the wears her heart on the sleeve, or where I wear my heart on my sleeve, or whatever. And the first theory is that it started in the Middle Ages. During a Roman festival, men would draw names of a woman and wear their name on the sleeve because the emperor at the time had banned marriage, believing that men were better soldiers when they weren't married. And so they picked these couplings for a year. So you would draw a new woman every year.
What?
And wear their name on your sleeve so that you would know to couple.
I'm looking for Joe. Is there a Joe around?
Are there any vampires? Let's start there. That's all I want. No? Any of you play D&D?
Our year is coming to an end. Please get your shit and move out.
Here's a Vinegar Valentine.
I get my new name tomorrow, okay?
I'm looking for Neil.
What if there weren't enough matches? Like, what if there weren't enough men? Did they then match the women with women? They're like, oh, we're out of men's names.
No, they were probably just like, you go home.
You get nothing.
Go home, Sasha. We don't even want to talk to you this year.
Better luck next year. We'll put you right at the top of the list next year.
You'll be the first to go.
I mean, it would simplify things so much.
Right? So many. No. Okay, no, we're not going there.
So many ways that could go wrong.
So the second theory is that more simply that when knights would go joust, they would take a scarf or some sort of trinket or something from the woman they were trying to impress or the woman they loved, and they would wear it on their sleeve while they joust.
And we see that in like A Knight's Tale,
yes,
where the
absolutely.
queen or the princess is always bestowing her favor upon one of the knights by giving her handkerchief or whatever.
Exactly. And then the third possible is literally from a Shakespearean play, which to me holds, we've taken so much from Shakespeare and it is just part of our everyday vocabulary now that we don't even realize.
It's incredible.
It's amazing. Actually, it'd be a great topic. We're so many topics today. We're
rolling today.
This is just a brainstorming session. But the phrase in Othello, Iago makes a confession and says, "But I will wear my heart upon my sleeve for daws to peck at." Basically saying he's going to expose himself and make himself available to be hurt. I kind of think that makes a lot of sense.
I like that one best.
Yeah.
Because that's how I've always taken it. Like, you wear your heart on your sleeve, you're very open with your feelings, and you're honest and open, and you're just like showing the world that you care, or that you're...
exactly. Yeah, and that's it, closest to what I feel it represents today. And we, like I said, we took so much from Shakespeare that you don't even know. One weird thing is something called lover's eyes. And these were popular in wealthy couples between the 18 and the 1900s. Not our late 1900s, but early.
In the 1990s.
1992. You either had your husband's name on a piece of rice and a piece of jewelry, or their eyeball. It's very
one or the other.
Exactly. There was no in between. Basically, you would hire someone to paint your significant other's eye on a small pendant or something, and then you could wear it in public. And if you didn't want everyone to know who your lover was, it was a secret, and there was just an eye, which is just weird to me.
Zach has really pretty eyes.
He does, yes. I say that like I'm shocked that you're admitting it. He really does. I'm glad you finally came out and said it. I've been dying.
I've been wanting to say it for so long.
I just didn't want to offend you.
But all I can think about is Jurian from Akotar and Amarantha wearing his eyeball on a ring.
That was my first thought, and I think that's why it bothers me so much.
And I guess that does, because like eyeball jewelry is a thing.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of trendy right now, or has been in the past couple of years. But I feel like it's more like macabre now. It's more dark and not
emo.
This is the eye of my lover.
Exactly. It was.
I'm gonna start wearing eye jewelry. That's it.
Get just Zach's eye though.
Nope.
Make sure.
All different ones. Make
werewolf
guess.
eyes. Only.
Every week I'll wear a new one. Be like, whose eye do you think this is?
All your friends.
So if Bree starts getting really uncomfortable in your face, studying your eyeballs,
I just want to take a quick photo.
It's because she's recreating jewelry in your likeness.
I hate this so much. You're not invited to my house anymore.
We have to do the podcast
you could probably
virtually.
Do mine from heart anyway. You don't even have to see them,
right?
For all this time. So yes, these were popular on rings, pendants, brooches, snuff boxes, and toothpick cases. There are fewer than 1,000 of these in existence today.
That does seem weird.
Yeah.
Like, were people destroying them? Were they buried with them, maybe?
Oh, that could be. That makes a lot of sense. Or they realized they were kind of creepy.
Like the trend got over and people were like, what were we thinking? They had a big like ceremony where they all threw them into the fire.
That's how we feel about low-rise jeans.
Seriously. Oh my God. I got uncomfortable just thinking about it.
Did you feel like you had to pull your pants up?
I did. It's like,
yeah.
Man, these pants are too tight and too low and too squeezy all at the same time.
You had to tie them with laces often.
And then make sure you're wearing your thong so it sticks
so
out the top.
We were weird.
The 90s were wild.
My last little fun thing, and I thought these were really cute. They're called love spoons. And these are exactly as you would think. It's a piece of wood carved into a spoon, Oftentimes the handles were decorated to whatever extent the carver could do it. It was often carved by men in the Navy because as like a show of they were thinking about their significant other and so on and so forth. And they were presented as a bouquet of flowers would be presented today.
Aww.
Which I just thought.
Just on their Navy boats whittling spoons out of driftwood.
Exactly.
That's cute.
I thought so too. I thought that was really kind of a lot of these are based in weird stuff. And so this was a
I would
one.
much rather have a whittled decorative spoon than an eyeball.
Absolutely. Even if it wasn't a real eyeball. I absolutely.
You did.
I also told Carly today, look, because she said something funny but sarcastic to me.
As she does.
She does. So the last thing I wanted to sort of talk about, and we can just touch base on this really quickly because I think there's plenty of this to cut out, but what do you think is going to be weird to people in 100 years? I thought mixtapes.
Oh, absolutely. And now that you've mentioned it, the grain of rice thing.
Yeah. For real. I almost wonder sometimes if tattoos of people's names or faces will be weird eventually. I know that it's very popular.
Probably.
But
I mean, tattoos are kind of... they've been around for
a long
centuries.
Time. Tribal, and they have a lot of meaning behind them.
But the ones we're doing these days, like you said, with the faces and...
an infinity symbol with a name. Like
right.
Those are...
feathers.
Yeah, yep. They're all very trendy. So I wonder if when we look back on them, or when they look back on us and say, they used to tattoo their names on each other. It's like
they owned each other.
Yeah. So
interesting.
I just think back, I'm like, so mixtapes are kind of something we would have shared with boyfriends or whatever in high school.
Or
high
burnt
school,
CDs.
middle school. Yeah, yep. Then it evolved into CDs. I made Ryan a playlist that I called Mixtape, and I wrote down the songs and what they meant to us. And
God, I used to do that all the time.
Yeah, and it was we were broke, so it was meaningful because I went back on all these memories and wrote them down and shared it. Is that going to be weird in 100 years? Yeah, they wrote down songs for each other. It was so weird. But music is also universal, so I don't know. It's very interesting. The rice, though, is hilarious. Yeah. It brings me back to old trends.
I lost it.
I know you had one.
Climbing into Jody's house.
Did it say Corey?
No, it was definitely Tony. Definitely Tony.
I knew it was one of the two. I just couldn't remember how early it was.
Right? We're talking 5th grade or 8th grade. 7th grade, I don't know. But yeah, it was definitely Tony. I lost it at Jody's house. I remember that.
Do you, on a different kind of, because we talked about different kinds of love last week, do you have any of Connor's old like hair or teeth or any of that kind of stuff?
I have his teeth.
Okay.
But mostly because I don't know what to do with them.
Not for like...
It's not because I was like emotionally attached to it.
Sure.
It was just, I didn't want him to like find it in the garbage.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I did not keep a curl when we cut his hair, but all of the grandparents wanted one.
Really?
So they have little pieces of his hair, but I don't think I do.
And I know they sell trinket boxes and memory sleeves for things like that still. I don't feel like they're as popular with our generation as they were with, as you said, mentioned, our parents. Bronze shoes.
Yes.
Bronzed baby shoes.
That's so weird to me.
So, especially because their baby shoes, they
were
didn't
awful.
wear. Yeah. They didn't wear them.
Right.
I think one of Carly's baby shoes was a literal pair of Converse. She never walked in them. She just put them on because they were cute.
Right. Yeah.
So even that kind of stuff sort of, and that's like, not I'm giving this to you because I love you, but I'm saving this because I love this memory and I love you. And
I mean, we're trinkety people. Like,
I am.
Our house is full of stuff.
Yep.
But there's just so much stuff that I look, and maybe it's because we live in a day and age where like capitalism and consumerism is so
rampant.
It's easy. You know, I don't need a bronze baby shoe because I have a light up toaster. Like,
how dare you?
Or,
I'm going to bronze my toaster now.
I don't need a bronze baby shoe because I took 3,000 pictures of Connor that year.
I was going to mention
and can
that
store
too.
them digitally.
Yeah, I've taken to, well, okay, first of all, I was such a mom.
I'm so gross with how much I love my child.
It's disgusting. Her very first year, I have pictures, like, she looked to the left. I have that picture, and then I'm looking to the right. And then she shifted slightly, and I took another picture. And I printed all of them out and put them in an album.
Yep.
Now I take them, another testament to technology, and every single year from her birthday to her birthday, I make a Shutterfly scrapbook of that year. It's a digital scrapbook that I then have printed and sent to my house. So I have 1 year of everything we did that was fun or exciting or monumental, all wrapped up in that.
I love that. I really need to start doing that.
I
only have 8 years to catch up
right now. And if you don't catch up now,
it'll just get worse.
Exactly. And I've gotten behind a year or two and then been like, I gotta get that done and get it. But it's so easy now. Yeah. So I love doing it, and I don't need to save as much. I do order a pocket to put in there, and I save some things, but it's less and less as she gets older.
Right.
So,
well, they get less and less. Like,
it's true.
It used to be, everything was a milestone. He started crawling, and then he started walking, and then he started doing this, and school.
He just started running.
You're right.
Climbing.
You're right. He
is
did.
Really what
he went from crawling to climbing, and running, and death stunts. All within 2 weeks.
Exactly. I remember once at the beach, we were standing there chit-chatting. It was a big group. And suddenly I looked over and you were chasing him down the dune.
Yep. He was gone.
Bye.
He was always trying to drown himself, too. He loves the water. Way before he could swim. He was like,
it's too soon. I'll learn. Yeah, so very interesting, the things that will change and that we thought of as so normal. And
it's interesting. I feel like we do less outwardly showing of relationships. Like, we have wedding rings.
Yes.
But it's apparently not like it used to be when people would have their partner's eyeball painted on something and wear it around. Like, and maybe this still happens in high schools, but like Leatherman jackets and all those things. We didn't even really have that when we were in school. Maybe like if your boyfriend got a class ring, you might change class rings.
Not gonna lie, my mom was like, don't give that to somebody else because it cost a fortune.
Right. Yeah. My dad was like, absolutely not.
Exactly.
And give your boyfriend's back. I don't want you to lose it.
And now I have mine and it's tucked in a box and I'm like, why did I buy this? I'm never going to wear it again.
Yep. I wore mine for an abnormally long time.
I wore mine a long time, but once I was done with it, I was done with it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I go back to it once in a while and throw it on like my dinosaur earrings.
Right. It was the most expensive piece of jewelry that I had for a long time too. So maybe that's why I was wearing it.
I don't know if it was my most expensive because my mom worked at a jewelry store from age of like born to 5, and so she had a lot of stuff, and once in a while she would let me use my stuff.
Sometimes I could wear my jewelry.
The nice stuff she always kept in a box locked. I could wear it like Sundays and for holidays.
You can look at this.
And when I got home I had to give it back to
Don't breathe on it.
Now I do it to Carly. Anyway, so it'll be interesting to watch the trends and even how they've changed since we were young and grown and been different. So, and I think that's all.
That's all, folks.
I was going to do Porky Pig and I'm like, I can't pull that off.
No,
Don't try.
It would sound like something.
Not Porky.
This has been Dungeons and Dopamine Podcast.
You can listen to us anywhere you stream podcasts and on YouTube.
You can support us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/dungeonsdopamine.
You can find us on Reddit, TikTok, Twitter, Insta, and Facebook. So, Facebook is the first one on the list, and I went rogue.
You went to the last one and worked. You just bounced all over. Good job.
Yeah.
You can
go me. Changing it
Jess. You can find us. Nope.
No,
you can also reach
cannot
out
find
to us via email.
They do know we're in the Northern Hemisphere. Thanks a lot for that.
I totally doxed us today. If you want to find out more, you can email us at dungeonsdopamine@yahoo.com or reach out to us on any of the aforementioned social medias.
In the wrong order.
If you can figure out what they are.
Dungeons and Dopamine is edited and published by Argyle Pigeon Productions. Alohamora. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye. We love you.
Yes, that too.